The Detroit Pistons, the most surprising team in the current NBA season, after turning around their entire rebuild in just 1 year's time, after being one of the worst teams in NBA history, going on a 28-game losing streak, ending the season with 14 wins and 68 losses just a season prior. How did the Detroit Pistons do this? Well, for starters, in the offseason, they fired Monty Williams. After just 1 season as the Detroit Pistons head coach, and even when they did sign him, he did openly say he didn't want to coach that season. It was going to be a recipe for disaster. Add that on top of a team that lacked shooting completely, and Cade Cunningham was failing to operate in the bad spacing. Killian Hayes being a full-time starter for this Pistons team, it was looking bleak from the start. Insert the 2024 offseason, where the Detroit Pistons decided to make a whole new personnel change, getting a new GM and a new coach to fully put this team into gear, acquiring JB Bickerstaff, a defensive-minded coach, to change the culture in Detroit. And one of the main issues that the Pistons had in the previous season was their shooting. And what did they do? They acquired all the shooters they could, adding Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., and their unsung hero and Malik Beasley. This Pistons team was going to change everything for the better. And coming into the season, instead of Jaden Ivey coming off the bench for Killian Hayes, he is now starting alongside Cade Cunningham, and the Pistons team started to make noise throughout the year. And with the emergence of Asar Thompson being that defensive-minded player that they needed to guard guards and be the hyper-athletic forward alongside Cade, the Pistons had everything they needed to be a competent NBA team. Asar has been great for this Pistons team. Add that to the fact that Malik Beasley's have been having a career season and has finally hit his stride in his NBA career, and it looks like he's finally found his home in Detroit, even to the point that right before the trade deadline, he walked into the GM's office and told them, please do not trade me. I want to stay in Detroit. Do not trade me. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't trade Malik Beasley, and he's been shaking ass on the NBA court ever since. The Detroit Pistons go on an 8-game win streak, beating teams like the Celtics, the Clippers, the Bulls not once but twice, the Hawks, the Spurs, the Hornets, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Although some of those teams weren't great, but the question is, what are they doing currently in the NBA? After the 8-game win streak was ended by the Denver Nuggets, they find themselves with a record of 34 wins, 27 losses, sitting at the 6th seed out east. Only being 1 game behind the Milwaukee Bucks for that 4 seed, anything can happen with this last remaining stretch of the NBA season. If the Pistons can manage to host a series against Indiana Pacers, or just end up playing the Pistons in this first round, they can upset them. But what changed them from being a 14-win team and with just 20 games left in this NBA season already having 34? What really switched? Outside of the coaching and outside of the offseason acquisitions, Cade Cunningham has been great. And although Cade Cunningham's numbers from last season don't look drastically different, in the 2023-2024 NBA season, Cade Cunningham averaged 23 points per game, 7.5 assists, 4.3 rebounds, shooting 45% from the field, 36% from 3, and in the 2024-2025 NBA season, Cade Cunningham jumped up to 25 points per game, also went up to 9.4 assists, 6.2 rebounds, and is shooting 46% from the field and 36% from 3. But it's the fact that he's getting his buckets a lot easier now with the spacing, instead of fighting for buckets time after time after time, and having that secondary scorer in Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, then a shorter off the bench. The Pistons team is locked and loaded for the playoffs. Having a hyper-athletic big in Jalen Duren in the paint too makes it a lot easier, and having the high-energy guys in Isaiah Stewart and Ron Holland off the bench, and Dennis Schroeder, and even with Cade's jump and potentially winning most improved player, Pistons team has a clear ceiling, and it might end around 42 to 43 wins, which is one of the biggest jumps in a singular season in NBA history, going from 14 wins to now potentially going to damn near 44. So in 1 season, the Detroit Pistons jumped up 30 wins without adding another superstar caliber player on this team, another all-star caliber player on this team, just roughing out the edges. The Detroit Pistons are heading in the right direction for the future, and they are going to be a team to be messed with in the next year or two when Ron Holland fully develops. Now, Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren really come into form, and all season long they've been doing this without their secondary scoring option in Jaden Ivey, who sustained an injury early on in the season. The Pistons are going to be forced to be reckoned with for the next couple of years, and that is how the Detroit Pistons turned around their rebuild. And if you're interested in a more hypothetical scenario, my last video will be on screen now, and as always, go hard on them dudes. Salute!